And what I called the biggest game potentially in Ole Miss's history, and I know I got some comments with some flack on that. Listen, I don't care what happened in the 1960s. Ole Miss hasn't finished inside the top 10, or, I guess inside the top 9, if you want to include 10th ranking in the AP poll, since 1960. So let's be real. This was the biggest college football game in Ole Miss history that everyone watching this video has watched for them. They go into Georgia, and Georgia just does what we've been kind of waiting for Georgia to do all season against a good team. I think Ole Miss got exposed for what they are, and the facts are, and I've said this about Ole Miss, is that they don't have the offensive and defensive line to compete with the elite teams. We saw it against Alabama be a problem. And then we saw it be a huge problem with Georgia, who literally Carson Beck. There was I think it was Brooks Austin. I think he does Sports Illustrated. Good guy over there for Georgia that covers him. They did not get a finger. They did not lay a single finger on Carson Beck as he averaged 10 yards per play on 60 yards, 600 yards of offense. We've talked about how good this Georgia offense has gotten. And it just each week they get better and better, and Carson Beck gets better, and there's more comfortability with Bobo and more trust. And we saw this. Ole Miss doesn't have a good defense, and they got completely exposed in this game. And, we talked about this even as early as last week, Alex. Me and you sat here and we talked about, there's 10 to 12 teams that we think could win it all. But as the season just keeps going and the teams get better and they round into form, and what we saw in week 3 doesn't matter nearly as much as now week 11 and week 12, it just seems like this collision course that is now officially set, Georgia and Alabama are the two best teams in the country. And I know I respect Oregon out there. They're a good team. I don't know if they can compete at this level quite yet. I think the Texas loss beating Alabama is much flukier in week 2. If that game's replayed, I think it's a much different thing. Washington, we've seen them show chinks in the armor. Obviously, Penn State, Ohio State, do they have offense? Even Michigan, you can say the same thing. Georgia just looks great. And I want to say one last thing before I hand it over to you, because this was the funniest thing that I saw, and I quote tweeted it on Twitter. And I think it was from Locked On Ole Miss, the whole Locked On podcast. And he said, the biggest compliment you can get is Georgia caring enough to beat the living hell out of you. Like he was trying, like the mental gymnastics he was going. He's like, this was a compliment. They weren't up for Missouri. They weren't up for Auburn. And in a way, there's something to that. But you just, when you lose 51-17, there's no positives you can take out of that.
Listen, Ole Miss, I think that's hilarious. And I think it's true. And I think that Ole Miss fans will hang their hat on that because you know what they're focused on? They're focused on getting 9 wins and winning the Egg Bowl. They lost it last year. They just want the Egg Bowl back. They don't have their sights set high enough to actually have a chance beating the Alabamas, the Georgias. I know they beat LSUs of the world, but Ole Miss will never reach the pinnacle for several reasons. One of them that you mentioned was the line of scrimmage. Listen, Ole Miss can recruit all they want in the secondary and the skill position groups, but until they start beefing up the line of scrimmage, they're always going to fall short to the LSUs, and I know they beat them, to the Bamas, to the Georgias, to everybody. Even A&M's got more beef up front, and I know that Ole Miss beat them, but, Ole Miss is never going to reach the pinnacle without addressing those issues first. But, they probably don't have the resources that's needed to do so. So it's not like this is a fixable thing. Like, this is just who Ole Miss is. They'll have to catch lightning in a bottle to really climb to the top of the mountain. And I think that Georgia's really, coming in their own, playing their best football at the right time. This is just who Kirby Smart's team is. He's not really concerned about the first month of the season. He's concerned about the last month of the season, and that's what the best coaches do. It's getting better each week. Listen, if you wouldn't be okay with it in a loss, you shouldn't be okay with it in a win. And that's how Kirby Smart kind of operates. There's always something that they can do better. Nick Saban is the exact same way, that he's not satisfied with just winning. We have to continually get better. Kirby Smart does that better than anybody, but Nick Saban started that. There's no doubt about that. I mean, this Georgia team looks like 3 straight national championship titles. I mean, that looks what they're headed to. In Atlanta, we are back. Alabama, Georgia. The collision course is set, and it is 2 freight trains running against one another. And, and I know a lot of Georgia fans are feeling very confident, and they should be. Listen, that offense is, top 10 in the nation. Their defense is probably a top 15, maybe top 20 in the nation. They're a very well-rounded team. But listen, Bama's offense is not that same offense that you saw Jalen Milroe get benched because of. Listen, Tommy Rees is starting to design more runs for it for Jalen Milroe, which opens up everything else. Jermaine Burton, I know Georgia fans don't like the guy, but he's still having a very productive season. That Alabama defense is also very legit, very legit. They have 2 NFL cornerbacks. NFL, Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be a first-round pick, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name who's opposite him in the boundary. He's sneaking into the first. He is sneaking. He is an incredible riser up draft boards. So that's another guy. They got Dallas Turner. They got guys. Obviously, Bama's never had a problem with talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible when you watch Georgia and Alabama, and you just have to give a testament, and it's a testament to Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, the 2 guys that are at the top of the sport and have been at the top of the sport for the last 15 years or whatever, at how much better both of these teams have gotten. And I think we always expected it from Georgia, but let's not sit here and lie like there wasn't doubt about Alabama, particularly after USF and Texas and stuff like that. Like, there was serious doubt that this team would ever get to the level that they're at right now. And they look unbelievable. They look like a completely different team. I mean, a completely different team. I mean, Milroe, they finally accepted, relied on his strengths, letting him run, letting him be like that. And that's opened up the passing game. I don't know why that took so long, but now it's very clearly part of the game plan. Tommy Rees doesn't look like a milk dud up there. He actually looks like he knows what he's doing. And then on the other side of the thing, Carson Beck has just gotten so much better every single week, which is what we expected. But Mike Bobo's gotten better. There's more confidence. They're healthy now. Lad McConkey's healthy. Brock Bowers is healthy. They got those 2 receivers. Oscar Delp's really good. I mean, and now they're getting healthy across the offensive line. I mean, you see them, no pressures against Ole Miss. I don't care if you're playing an FCS school. No pressures in a single game is unheard of. I mean, it's unheard of. They are just so loaded, and defensively, they're only getting better. And but I'm not going to discount Alabama because they have gotten so much better. And it's 2 titans of the sport meeting in Atlanta, and it's going to be as good as advertised. I think it's going to be as good as advertised. I think you're going to see adjustment. I think you're going to see college football at its pinnacle between 2 teams that both have flaws, but have coaches that know how to get the absolute best out of their players and get better every single week to get them prepared for this exact moment. You're not going to see a bunch of mistakes. You're not going to see a bunch of that. It's going to be such a well-played football game. And I know we're kind of previewing it earlier than it is, but it is this 2 matchup, and it is the titans of the sport. And it should be built up like that. It should be talked about for 3 weeks, because if you like college football, I don't care, we're both LSU fans, this is a game that you would sit down on any Saturday and be obsessed with watching, because it's everything that college football is about. It's from getting better from week 1 to week 12 to week 13 to week 14 and preparing for this moment. And what makes it even better than possibly this matchup in years prior is that the loser is probably out. The loser is probably out. So whoever wins that game is probably going to the college football playoff, and the other is going to have to sit on the bench. And they might be the 2 best teams, but it's a college football playoff game before the college football playoff.
You're absolutely right. That's what I was going to lead into. And hey, Bama wins this, and they're no shoo-in. I know everybody's thinking that, but if you look at the landscape, we expect the Big Ten to produce 1 undefeated team therein, whether it's Michigan or Ohio State. Me and you both think it'll be Michigan. I don't even think that game's going to be even close, by the way. And then we all expect Florida State to take care of business. They escaped Miami. I thought they would look a little better. I do expect them to beat Florida as well. ACC championship, they'll be undefeated. And then you got a Texas team who has beaten Bama, probably going to win out in the Big 12 championship. Let's say Oregon also, and I'm not saying that Oregon's resume is better than Bama. I'm just giving you the full picture. That Oregon wins out. They go on to beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship. They're a 1-loss conference champion. Now you got Bama 1-loss conference champion, Texas 1-loss conference champion. Georgia looked incredible. Their only loss is to Bama conference champion. Obviously, only 2 teams get in because you got Ohio State or Michigan along with Florida State. Somebody's fan base is going to be sitting here feeling like they got robbed here in a couple months. It's going to be devastating.
There is still some games to be played. I mean, we do get Washington. Yes, they go on the road to play Oregon State this week. They're actually underdogs. I'm sure we'll talk about later in the week. Then Oregon obviously has that rivalry game with Oregon State the following week. Then those teams play. I mean, listen, Washington goes undefeated. Bama's almost certainly out of it, even though they won.
Yep.
Because they're almost certainly on it, because I don't see how they get in over Texas with that loss. So a lot of games to be played. I'm not going to get there yet. But hey, no one slipped up to this point. So yes, chaos very well. And someone is going to be very upset. Coming up after the break, huge news. Aaron Nola, Sonny Gray, potential targets for the Braves. We're going to discuss it.